Welcome, world language teachers, to yet another Wolang Wednesday. It's so exciting to be with you today because we're talking about something that in just a flash is going to make your whole teaching experience that much easier. And it's as short as a sentence. Can you believe that? Yeah, you guessed it. We're talking about can do statements today and how to actually make can do's can do. So let's jump right in. Hey, if you're new around these parts, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here for the party. My name is Devin, and I am the teacher, author, and creator behind La Libre Language Learning if you teach French, or La Libre Language Learning if you teach Spanish. Welcome to Wolang Wednesday. We do this every Wednesday, so come hang out with us every Wednesday. And today we are continuing our series in curriculum creation or revamp, whatever you're working with. But we're going to be looking at an aspect of something with can-do statements. I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can use the things that we've been talking about in this curriculum series to start making changes to your curriculum that you can use tomorrow that will actually make your lesson plans better already. Exciting, right? Let's dive right in. So let me know in the comments below, first of all, where you're watching from and if you're on spring break or not this week. My school district that my son is in is on school spring break this week. So I want to see where we're at. Oh, I'm checking and seeing that we're at. Hola, Anna. Hi, Ingrid. Come on in, come on in. Happy to see you, happy to see you. All right, let's get this party started. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get rolling. So let me know if we are all good to go. Can you hear everything? Can you see everything? And especially when I share this, make sure that this is sharing appropriately. All right, hold on. Let me get in on this one. All right. From the Netherlands, thanks for hanging out with us, Ingrid. That's so cool. All right, y'all. Looks like we are good. Can we see? All right, we're set. Y'all, we're talking about can-do statements today. This is going to be short and sweet because this is something that you can get started with right away. Tomorrow, if you're not on spring break, you can do this tomorrow. Or, let me make this large and in charge. Or you can also save this for when you're done spring break and you can watch this replay later and get going with this topic right in your curriculum the next day. Some of the other things that we've been talking about, you'll see here that this is class 3 out of a series of 12 for our spring series, but talking about can-do statements, this is part 1 out of a few for ACTFL tools because we're going to use a lot of different things. Let me move this microphone a little bit so we can hear better. Où on voit l'écran? Okay, beautiful. Oui, on voit l'écran. Merci, merci bien. So with ACTFL tools, we've got a couple different things that we're going to talk about. We're going to have a class on performance indicators, and we're going to have a class on the different proficiency benchmarks and what all of those are great tools. And I know that we're all familiar with them, but what I find happens a lot with my own curriculum creation, as well as with other people's, is how do we use them effectively and in a way that's not just a bunch of talk and action. So today we're going to talk about one of my favorite ways that we can really get into it, which is can-do statements. Can-do statements are hands down my favorite ACTFL tool. So even though they're not part of the overall, they're not supposed to be part of the shaping of your overall curriculum, and we'll talk about that in a second. This is where I love to start because they're the easiest tool to really jump into, especially if you're new to ACTFL. So if you're new to ACTFL, welcome to the party. And if you're not new to ACTFL, you're gonna re-fall in love with it when we talk about can-do statements here, because they're I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comments, but I think that can-do statements are the most helpful thing that ACTFL's come out with. They're my favorite tool. I used them all the time in the classroom, and they shaped a lot of what I did. So this is something that I think is really gonna help you out. Hi, I'm Devin. I was a French and Spanish teacher in the public high school area of South Carolina. Now I'm in a new role where I create curriculum full time, and I also do consultations to help other people with their curriculums. But my absolute favorite thing to do is to help teachers work on curriculums themselves, because Let me know if this was true for you too. Put a yes in the comments if this is you. And hello to my replay friends. If you're watching this in the future, tell us how the future is. I hope it's awesome. But for many teachers like me, this has probably happened to you at some point. So put a yes in there if this is you. You have to create your own curriculum if you're a world language teacher. There's everything about what we do and the supplies that we are quote unquote given, but usually the answer is not given. We're working with patchwork supplies, and we also have a lot of freedom, which is a good thing, to work with whatever we want to and create curriculum. So we really are what I like to call accidental curriculum experts in the teaching field when it comes to curriculum. I mean, for real, give yourself a break. People have master's degrees in this topic, but you're doing it in addition to the already mountainous pile of teaching responsibilities that you have. So yeah, give yourself one of those. You're doing awesome. And to help you with that, I do live classes every Wednesday. And this series right now is all about curriculum because y'all, curriculum is my jam. I love curriculum. I love curriculum because I think that when you dial in your curriculum, everything about teaching gets easier because it is that overarching framework to help shape the daily decisions that you're making. And your daily decisions are so much. So having a good framework really shapes things up. So come and join me for these live classes every Wednesday, and you can get the schedule right there at that website. I'll show you again at the end of class so that we can move right on along here. But it's lalibrelanguagelearning.com/Wednesday. And you'll be able to find the whole schedule there. Can you tell I'm obsessed? Let's make this a thing. Come hang out with me. It's every 3 p.m. We just started this curriculum series, but we've talked about lots of other cool things, and you can check out all the replays to see what else is there. Now, why on earth, why, Devin, would you do 12 classes about curriculum? Because I think that curriculum allows you to focus on what you're here to do, which is to teach. Let me see what we got here. Oh, see, yeah, Anna says yes. Ingrid says yes. See, they're both creating or piecing together their curriculums right now. And Anna, I've talked to you about your curriculum. You really are. You're working with a couple different pieces of things. So this not having to do as much of those large decisions and maybe focusing on it whenever you're deciding to set aside that time. Let me know in the comments below, when do you usually work on your curriculum? I know for me, the reason I'm doing this spring series is because historically, I used to work on my curriculum in the spring. I would do heavy work on it in the summer for a few days, maybe even a week. But I would usually do it in the spring because even though things were still going on with the school year, that was a really good time to meet with other people, to have the time to process how all of the final product was coming together, because you'd have the spring and assessments and all of those things. So you were able to really see the year for the fruition of it, right? Because that end of the year is where you see how far you've really come since the beginning. Now, all of it's all wonky right now, I'm sure, because in world language, there's never really been such things as levels. Levels are kind of a sham in world language. Proficiency is what really matters, and that just gets so scattered in level classes and so mixed in. But especially during COVID teaching, that's even harder to do. So you might be all over the place in terms of looking at exactly how you're getting students from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. If you can, release yourself of that pressure right now, because that's not going to serve your students as well as what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about today is very much the micro level, because a lot of curriculum talks about how you can make things happen on a larger scale, on a macro level of maybe having to do lots of revision, lots of reflection. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to talk about something that is quick, easy, and that you can do tomorrow if you chose to. So with that in mind, set your intentions now. Get in your Zen zone. Set your intention now. Look at that cup of tea and think about how delicious it would be. And tell me what's going to be your action plan, because you made an intentional choice to sit or stand or chill, whatever you're doing, with me here today to think about your can-do statements and your curriculum. What are you hoping to get out of our time together? Time is your most valuable asset. So what are you hoping to get out of this? For me, my intention for you is that you come out of this class with something that is not overwhelming about curriculum, something that you can use tomorrow and that is really practical and that helps you to feel the true accomplishments of what you're doing in your classroom. Because many times the progress that we make with our students is not linear, right? So we're not able to see and measure that progress right away, but I'm going to show you a way that you can start to do that so that you and your students both feel like you're making very tangible progress. So I'm going to ask you at the end of class, remember this, I'm going to ask you at the end of class, what is one thing that you're going to do this week? Or if you're on spring break, that answer is probably nothing, and as it should be. If you're on spring break and you are chilling with some PD, as I loved to do, so I applaud you for that. I like to relax with PD as well. But if you're chilling with some PD, what's something that you're planning to do next week when you're back in school? If it's only one thing, what's that one thing going to be? Because there's going to be a lot of information today, but you really only need one thing. And here's how we're going to start our whole conversation on can-do statements. Here's your question. You ready? Imagine that I'm a student in your class. How do I know, if I'm in your class, how do I know if I'm successful in class today? How do I know that I'm successful? How do I know that I've met your expectations, that I've met the objectives? What are some of the ways that you're doing that? I'll give you some time to think about it, seep into it. Put your answer in the comments if you know how you're currently doing this. If I'm a student in your class, how do I know if I'm successful today? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to read some of the comments that we got here. Okay, so Ingrid says, for planning curriculum, ideally in the summer, but this year reworking it on the go. It's a bit messy. It's a good idea. That's a really good idea. I like to plan in advance before the upcoming semester. I end up having to adjust lessons on a daily basis. That is ditto, word for word, exactly how I used to do in the classroom. Yep, that's for real. Okay, so how do I know if I'm successful in class today? Let me tell you how my answer used to be when I first started. When I first started teaching, if you were in my class, how you knew if you were successful in my class was if you were well behaved, if you completed all of your work, and if you were kind to other students in class, and if you tried your best. All good things, right? But that's how you knew that you were successful in my classroom. But none of those are language goals. And what's happening in a lot of our classrooms is that those are incredible goals about making sure that we are fostering incredible human beings. And I will never, ever, 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 ever say that that's a bad thing. But they are also doing that in every other class in their school experience. So what's making your Chinese class different from their English class then, if that's the only way that they know that they're successful? They should be learning skills well, maybe not every day, but most days they should be walking out of class with a tangible skill. And the way that my students knew that they were successful at the end of class in the middle of my career was they were able to demonstrate mastery of an aspect of language learning. So they were able to show me how to conjugate a language chart. They were able to show me that they could understand a little bit of a conversation between two native speakers at maybe a novice level. They were able to show me that they could use the right verb at the right time. A little bit better, right? Now we're starting to get into some language goals. However, those are features about language, not really proficiency. They're helpful in your language learning journey, but they're not going to lead to language acquisition. So if you're trying to build a proficiency-based program, how do I know if my students are successful today, if I'm the teacher? And if I'm a student in class, how do I know if I'm successful in class? Honestly, you know what all your students are going to say? Can I speak Spanish? Can I read Spanish? Can I write Spanish? And they're going to want like specific examples of that. I'm able to do this in Spanish. I can say my name in Spanish. I can respond to a question about my birthday in Spanish. I can talk about the weather and what clothing I should wear in Spanish. That's how students know that they're successful. And that's also how you can measure that they're successful. Let me see what we got here. These are great. Ooh, exit tickets. Ingrid, great idea. You can use can-do statements for this too. I use exit tickets a lot. That's actually an incredible practice to do. In some schools that I've worked at, exit tickets were a requirement for us to do every day, to do that CFU every single day. Anna says, I'm successful if I feel that I understood the lesson. Ooh, that's a good one. That's also definitely a can-do statement that you could boil down. I give them exit tickets and they tell me they feel happy when that happens. Ooh, that's a lot of really great reflection that they're doing too. So the last year of the last 2 years really of teaching that I really started to get into can-do statements as a tool for proficiency is I started to do things like this. Is I would measure exactly like y'all are doing with exit tickets or a bunch of different ways that you could do this. Is I would use the can-do statements, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but let's look at an example first to drive daily lesson objectives. And what my students would have to ask themselves is at the end of each day is, I can ask, for this example, this is a novice mid interpersonal can-do statement. So for a novice mid student in my Spanish 1 class, I can ask who, what, when, where, questions about a party. That's a crazy concrete skill. And students can look at that statement and say, yeah, I can do that, or I can do half of that, or I can do 3/4 of that. P.S. That's a really great way to do speaking quizzes. That's how I used to grade my speaking quizzes. This comes from the South Carolina World Language Proficiency Standards, which are all based off of the ACTFL ones. And we're going to look at this website in a second. So I want to make sure that you have this here. This is where we're going to go. This is also in the comments of the event where y'all were able to find this live, is actfl.org, resources, all those things, ACTFL can-do statements. I'm going to put this in the comments after our class so that you'll be able to go right to it. But we're going to jump in and visit this for a second here. What is a can-do statement? I'll tell you in my own words that a can-do statement is a learner-forward, very objective statement that talks about exactly what a student is able to do with the language in incredibly specific and concrete terms. Like I can ask questions about a party. Here's another example of one that we used from last week's class. Novice, mid, interpersonal, another one. I can request and provide information by asking and answering a few simple questions on very familiar and everyday topics. So let's pause for a second. If we go back to this one, this is a can-do statement based off of this, which is a performance indicator, which is basically like a standard in world language, also from ACTFL. This person here, if they're able to do the can-do statement, is just doing a more specific version of that guideline skill. Can you ask a simple question on a very familiar everyday topic? A very familiar and everyday topic is a question about a party. So if we're talking about a party, that novice mid learner can ask who, what, where, or when. That's the specific part about it. Using a mixture of practiced or memorized words, phrases, and simple sentences. So how you can make this happen in your classroom is that the focus of your class this day might be something along the lines of, clase, hoy vamos a aprender las preguntas en español. We're going to learn question words in español, and you just practice all different types of activities where students are exposed to a bunch of different question words and they have to answer them so that eventually they're ready to ask them themselves. And of course, that's a novice mid-scale, so you're not going to be able to do that right off the bat. It's going to take, all those repetitions, 75 to 125 per phrase. And then eventually you'll get them to that point. And here's what, let's go ahead and let's jump out of this for a second, and let's jump into these can-do statements on the website here. So this is the exact page that I gave you here, ACTFL resources, all this good stuff. Don't worry, I'm going to give you this link here. And on here, it talks about how you can organize these. And this is where it comes from. So first, when it comes to curriculum, you have these overarching proficiency benchmarks. We're going to do another class about that. Then you have the performance indicators. That's one of the things that I showed you earlier, which is the more general ways that you can measure language proficiency. And then we go to can-do statements. Can-do statements describe what learners can do consistently over time. So being able to answer a who, what, when, where question about a party if they're a novice mid-learner, which would be, level 1, maybe early level 2. The reason that these types of statements work so well is because they are so learner friendly. Now, what are they not for? They are not a checklist to be demonstrated once and then done. That's a really good reminder. I know I always needed that reminder. So this is a really, really good reminder of this. What they also can do is they help learners set goals as they progress along the proficiency continuum. It's a really great way for your students to see, especially in their exit tickets like y'all are using, if what's happening in class is working for them, if they can understand what's going on in class, and if they've hit that benchmark for whatever they're at. It can be used to adapt school, district, and curriculums as well as learning goals, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But it's not a prescribed curriculum. And it's a starting point for assessment, goal setting, and creation of rubrics. So I will tell you that we're going to talk about today how I use can-do statements for rubrics. They are not an instrument for determining a letter or number grade. That's also a really helpful reminder. Now, when you go to this website, you will see all of the PDFs that you need for your specific level and all the things that you need. Novice, intermediate, and advanced, and then intercultural communication. We're going to be talking about that one today too. All right, so let's take a look at these. So this is the novice and intermediate can-do statements from the webpage I just showed you here. We've got interpretive, interpersonal, presentational, all of these here. So you can see this is a really, really useful document, right? Something that's going to be incredibly useful to you as an educator are these questions up here for what these are for. How can I exchange information and ideas in conversations? Let's go back to our presentation for a second here, and I want to show you something that this is how I used to use can-do statements, and this is why I believe that they are the most powerful tool for educators from ACTFL. Can-do statements were, for me, when I first, sorry there, table, were the first things that I replaced old language with on my rubrics. So they were the indicators for rubrics on assessments. So when it came to reading and writing and speaking and all those things, when I first started revising all of my rubrics to make sure that they were geared for proficiency, I skipped the performance indicators and the proficiency benchmarks because they're honestly, I will say in terms of practicality, they're too hard to use on a day-to-day basis. They're really excellent to help you guide your program to make sure that you're going in the right direction. But like day-to-day grading, they're really hard to use. So not because they're not well made, but because that's not really what they're for. They're for overarching things and for the macro level. But for the micro level, I use the can-do statements to replace all of the language on my rubrics. And that was such a game changer. Because imagine this conversation going down. You're sitting with a student and they're doing a speaking quiz on talking about their favorite places to go around town. And you ask them, Hey, sounds like you're going to a cool event next week. Where is it? And they answer you with 7:30. Then you can look at the performance and the can-do statement, and you can say, oh, okay, you know the time, but where is it? And then they say, oh, ¿dónde? Where? And they give you está en la plaza or será en la plaza, all that good stuff. And that can-do statement helps you to forget about all of our hangups about errors, and remember that the goal of the can-do statement is that they'll be able to do that. And it doesn't say anywhere that they'll be able to do it perfectly. It doesn't say anywhere that they'll be able to do it without hesitation. It says, I can ask who, what, where, or when questions about a party, or in this instance, I can answer who, what, when, or where questions about a party. The only time that a student would get knocked points off for that is if they have no idea what you're saying, or if the answer was really jumbled. So it takes away a lot of that insistence for perfection in our grading, and it also takes away a lot of the subjectivity in grading. So that's how can-do statements can really be used to sharpen up your program. The other thing that I used to use can-do statements for was they were my tasks for weekly speaking quizzes. So let me know in the comments below, how do you assess speaking skills? How is that going for you right now? What are you using to assess how students are speaking in your classroom? And then tell me, how long do you usually spend grading speaking quizzes? Because if you are anything like me, these used to take me so much time. So much time. Using can-do statements, I figured out a way that I could grade on the spot all of my speaking quizzes in a way that was still proficiency driven, because I am all about practical. If it's not practical, it doesn't happen in my classroom. At least I try not to. I still did a couple obsessive things that I just liked because I liked. Who doesn't? But for assessment, can-do statements really helps to cut down on your grading time. For speaking quizzes, what I would do is, let's go back to this simple example of I can ask who, what, where, or when questions about a party. If the student was able to do it, they got full points for that question, maybe 4. If the student was able to do it, but they needed some guidance, like it took 3 or 4 tries, then they would get a 3 or a 2 out of 4. And if they did not understand the question, then they wouldn't be able to get any points for the question. And then I would move on to the next one, which is, of course, why you would have 2 or 3 different questions in that speaking quiz. But I could grade right there, right on the spot, and give the students their grade. And I would always make sure that the questions were 4s, like in sets of 4 or 5, so that I could do easy math to, make it in like 10s or 20s. And then I didn't spend any time grading. All I spent time doing was putting things into the grade book, which, when you have a good system, doesn't take as much time. But if you're a high school teacher, like I was, then you probably have 120 to 160 students. So you have to find a way where you can get these done quickly. So I had so many speaking things to grade, and with weekly speaking quizzes, oh my gosh, there was a time in my career where I didn't do speaking quizzes because they took so much time to grade, until I figured out a system like this. So I'm hoping that by showing you this will help you to not only be more proficient in your classroom in terms of being more proficiency focused and aligned, but that it will save you time in your grading, because using can-do statements, it takes away a lot of the subjectivity in the work for you. The last way that I used to use can-do statements, besides having them posted all over my room so that students could figure out what we were doing that day, and it was always the objective, all that good stuff, is that I would use it to assess and reassess the proficiency of my teaching and my curriculum. When I was working with a department, we would use the can-do statements to see if the stuff in our curriculum was actually moving us towards proficiency. If we were teaching in a way that would lead to the skills appropriate for that level. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to make this large and in charge to show you what I mean by that. This is something that I'm working with for consultation for a curriculum to make sure that the curriculum that we are working on for these novice learners is truly working towards novice level skills. So we're taking the content in this curriculum, whatever the unit is, whatever the students are learning about, the functional chunks and all of the phrases and all the good stuff, and we're seeing if it matches up with all of these. These are all of the ACTFL performance indicators and all the good stuff for interpersonal communication. And here is the general overview in terms of interpersonal communication for a proficiency-focused curriculum. I can communicate in spontaneous spoken, written, or signed conversations on familiar and everyday topics using a variety of practiced, memorized words, phrases, simple sentences, and questions. And the guiding question for this, for our performance indicators, is how can I, as the student, express, react to, and support preferences and opinions in conversations? So for our novice lows, people who are just brand new to the class and are just getting their feet wet with language, here are some can-dos to make sure that the content that we are teaching and using in class facilitates language acquisition. I can identify my favorite places or things from a list. So think about this for a second in your own curriculum with what you're teaching tomorrow. Are you teaching something tomorrow, or your figurative tomorrow if you're on break? Are you teaching something tomorrow that is driving your students towards a proficiency goal that's going to get them from one step to the next? Because here's novice low to novice mid. Part of the huge parts about can-do statements is it shows you progression as well. I can identify my favorite places or things from a list. Moving to, I can exchange preference with my friend about our likes and dislikes. So you can look at your activities and see if I'm doing activities, like for me, one of my faults in the classroom is that I love authentic texts. And so when it comes to that kind of teaching style, what you have a lot is that I would do a lot of interpretive listening activities, but then I would focus a lot on interpersonal communication in my assessments. So that can be a problem, right? Your students need a lot of input, but if my students are just identifying things all day long for their activities, they might not have enough opportunities in class to exchange preferences about their favorite places, about their likes and dislikes. So they might be stuck in novice low in this skill. They might not be moving to novice mid because they're not able to do that. Not because it's not in their brains, but because, and they haven't been provided with the language, but because they've never been provided the opportunity in class. It helps me to look at a curriculum. It also helps me to look at my own teaching style and my individual lessons to see, oh snap, we're not doing enough of this specific skill. We're not exchanging preferences enough. Here's another specific example of how you can do this. Are you like me? Did you used to have a big content calendar? I used to do this on a Google. On a Google Calendar, I would have, just for my own quick reference every day, like a topic that I was doing every day. So for French 1, Unit 4 was always a food unit. And so we would have, the first day would be a vocabulary introduction where we would do, a whole CI vocabulary and context lesson. And then the next day we would have students try to identify with vocabulary flashcards and context. And then you would have students exchanging preferences by just like picking between pictures and things like that. And then they would move on to interpreting some documents to see if they could read menus. And then they would go on to sharing food preferences from the school cafeteria. Are you able to say, I like this, oui, j'aime, or non, je n'aime pas? And if you look at that, exchanging preference with my friend about likes and dislikes, if that's what I'm trying to get them to do to be able to be novice mid in a French 1 food unit, those activities, honestly, there's only one opportunity for them to work on that skill. Of the 5 that I just gave you, there's only one opportunity. They probably need more. So by using these can-do statements, you can really look in an objective way and get into the details of moving your lessons from good to great. Let's take this example a little bit further. Let's say I'm still working with my French 1 food unit and thinking, okay, so they've interpreted some menus. They've talked to each other a little bit about whether they like things or don't like things. They've done a little bit of that, but they haven't made full sentences yet. Let's see if we can push the limits a little bit and get to this novice high skill, because it's the end of the year. Level 1s, they should be pushing novice high, many of them. I can exchange ideas with others about ways to stay healthy. Okay, so let's change this a little bit for, oh, you know what? Let's do this one at the bottom. This is even better. I can exchange opinions with friends about the school's cafeteria food. Throw me some ideas in the comments below. What are some ways that you would do that in class? I can exchange opinions with friends about the school's cafeteria food. I'm thinking just off the top of my head, you could do infogap activities with this that would really bring it from novice mid to novice high. Of if I'm telling somebody what I have for lunch every day, like, par exemple, je mange des fruits, je mange le spaghetti du cafétéria et je mange aussi du yaourt. Et c'est assez bien. And then the other person would say something like, je mange de la cuisine de la cafétéria tous les jours et c'est dégoûtante. Then they're exchanging opinions a little bit with friends, and you can give them maybe even a little bit with that infogap activity. You could ask them to figure out, like, they could list foods and you could have them put whether it was yummy or dégoûtant. You could do all different kinds of things with that. You could also see if you could find, there's so many different videos on YouTube about French cafeteria foods, because they just do school so much differently than we do with cafeteria foods. But that's like, you're going to get me into a whole different, you're going to get me into a whole different thing on that with authentic text. If you want that class, let me know, because I can show you exactly how you can find all those types of things. Then you could do some interpretive listening with that. And then you could go on to a communicative activity from there. There's so many different ideas. There's so many different ideas. So that was the main way that I used to use can-do statements, because that would really help to shape the quality of my lesson plans every day, to make sure that we were really, really on track with what was going on, and that students were actually using their class time to move from novice mid to novice high. So let's get practical. It's time to figure this out. Look at your unit calendar. What topics, if you're looking at your unit calendar, if you're like me and you had a unit calendar, maybe you're doing a food unit, look at your unit calendar. What are some topics or some lesson plans that maybe you could even change to can-do statements? So we were talking earlier about, I can exchange opinions with friends about the school's cafeteria food. That could be a guiding statement for a unit, especially if you're doing a mini unit. So that's a way that you can use can-do statements to become very, very practical about your choices. Here's another way that you can get practical. How many of you, put this in the comments below if this is you. Oh, I'm seeing some comments here. Ingrid, great tool. Didn't know about the ACTFL. It's yes, Ingrid. It's the US representation of, yes, that exact thing. And I don't remember what the European one is and what it's called, but it's the one that's A1, A2, B1, B2. It's the exact same thing. And ACTFL worked in collaboration with that European organization in order to create a lot of these documents in the early 80s or 90s, I think it was. Do not quote me on that. But they worked in harmony together to create a lot of, they worked very closely together. I don't know if they still do, but I know that they did originally to create the big giant proficiency manifesto, whatever you want to call it. And the can-do statements came out of that project. They're the version that I'm showing you here, let me go back to it for a second, is more recent. So these are from 2017. They're definitely a more recent revision, but these, and I don't know exactly how long that they've been around. I'm not sure about that, but this idea of using these very learner forward language, It's not a new concept, and they've been using it in Europe as well. Like the performance indicators, I forget what they're called for the European version, but they're very similar in terms of the types of things that they do. I obviously don't teach in Europe. You can see by my lack of knowledge on it that I'm not familiar with exactly how the language works, but that they're similar. They're definitely very similar. And all of these, by the way, these PDFs that I'm showing you, these are all free downloads off of ACTFL, so you can use them right away to help you with things. So if you are like Ingrid or Anna or anybody else, maybe like me as well, because I've definitely been in this position. Have you ever been in the position where you've had to justify moves in your curriculum? For example, things to make things more proficiency driven in your department, in your school, whatever you're doing. Because if you're like me, you're in a position where world language is still something that we're getting people to understand how it works, right? And how it should work in a classroom setting. You can use a lot of these statements. I mean, it doesn't get any more clear cut than this. I can say in Russian what food I like or dislike. That's way more clear cut than being able to identify language features about Russian. That's way more clear cut. So you can use these to help justify proficiency moves in your district, or to say, listen, these are the new standards. This is what I need to be able to teach towards, and this is what I need to be able to use in my assessments. Could you, por favor, help me to get there by getting me some actual training, getting me a curriculum workshop? Could you help me, give me the time and space and energy to work on my curriculum to make it more proficiency oriented or aligned? It really, really helps when you have that backing of can-do statements. It also, if you're working in a program where you're a little bit divided, that happens. You're not alone if you're in that. I've been there. My department was so amazing. So amazing. We were really pressed for time. We were really, really pressed for time. We wanted to get to a lot of proficiency goals, but we also had a lot of other things on our plate. So we sometimes had to use things like, hey, this is the, like, get on at school. Like, these are the can-do statements. Like, we've got to make these moves, and we got to make them now in order to advocate for our program. So they're really helpful in that respect. Number 3, they really help to take the subjectivity out of grading, and that's good for everybody. How many times have you sat with other language teachers and they've all given the same piece of work, maybe a writing sample, like a 10 to 15 point difference on a grade? Oof, it's happened. I've watched it happen before. When the more the teachers know and understand and work with can-do statements and proficiency levels, I've noticed the subjectivity goes out of it. It really does. Especially when I was working in a department, I noticed this. We would get together. We were a real tight-knit team, and we would get together and we would sometimes grade things together, and we would use can-do statements, especially to help us with this on the rubric. And even though we would sometimes come up with a different number, we would almost always come up with a pretty close, yes, that student achieved the can-do, or no, that student did not achieve the can-do, or maybe somewhere in the middle is close to that can-do, but maybe needs more practice. It eliminates a lot of that subjectivity out of grading because they're so clear cut. And the last one that I want to show you is that this is going to be your new best friend, is that it has intercultural communication can-dos. This is about to be your best friend. Oh, not this one. This is where we're about to go. Okay, so these ones are the ones that you're very familiar with, probably, if you're familiar with ACTFL, that you have interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational modes of communication. Now we also have, and there used to be a cultural aspect to it, but it was embedded in everything that we were doing in these 3. But now it's way better in that we have intercultural communication standards, and they're separated into 2 facets: investigative and interactional. So let's take a look at these bad boys, and let's see if I can make it bigger here. Okay, so for investigating, we've got, in my own and other cultures, I can identify products and practices to help me understand perspectives. And then for interactional, I can interact at a survival level in some familiar everyday contexts. Isn't that so much easier to assess? It's so much easier to assess. This is going to help you out a lot when it comes to cultural materials, when it comes to embedding culture into everything that you do as much as you can in the classroom, because I know that can be really hard. And also being able to assess that intercultural competence and intercultural communication. Now you've got some guidelines to help you. And this is where you can start to get to that next level, is in this one, you're making comparisons. I can interact at a functional level. You can see where that's really starting to come up. Oh, Karima, thank you. You've got us. CEFR, Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. Thanks for swooping in and saving me with that. Oh, yeah, all the time. Good. I'm so glad, Ingrid. Yeah, A1 to C1. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I'm so glad that that's helpful to you. And thank you for helping us with that, with the CEFR, Common European Framework. I'm going to put a link in the comments for that as well at the end of class so that we can all look at that too, because those two standards as well, they really work together in harmony. You can see that all the A1, A2, a lot of that language, it mirrors a lot of the things that are said in novice. So for Ingrid and other international viewers who are using the European frameworks, CEFR, thank you so much, Karima. I really appreciate you putting that in there. That framework lines up really well with novice for A1 and A2, and then intermediate for B1 and B2. Intermediate's down here somewhere. And then for advanced for the C1 and C2s, as far as I can tell. So for the last thing that you can really do to make this practical is the intercultural communication can really help you out with making sure that this is happening in your classroom in a real way, culturally speaking. So it's time, y'all. Let's get at them. Tell me in the comments, how are you going to use a can-do statement to help you make your life easier in class, more proficiency driven, more proficiency centered, or to help your students this week? What's something that you got from this class that you can make happen that won't take you that much time? So there are some big changes that you can make, but there's also little changes. As we talked about in the beginning of class, there are some little changes that you can make as well that are really empowering to help shape your curriculum in a proficiency style without having to do a lot of that really heavy work that can be curriculum. I love curriculum, but it's a haul. It can really be a haul. So can-do statements are nice and light, easy, and they give you those almost instantaneous results of, bam, I'm doing that, or, oh, no, I'm not. So let's look at some of these again and see if this helps you. Put it in the comments below. What are some things that you think you could do? I'm excited to hear your thoughts. And while you're writing that, let's talk about what's next. Okay, so the first thing that we got here is I told you that you would have this link again, and you will. Download the whole, if you are new here, I'm so happy to have you. And if you are coming back to watch another class, welcome. Thanks for joining me again. It's really lovely to see you. But you can download the whole schedule. It has all the links to every single class that we're going to be doing. Today we're on April 7th, and next week we're going to be doing common level 2 curriculum mistakes in world language. So come join us for that one, April 14th. And you can get the whole schedule at lalibrelanguagelearning.com/Wednesday. lalibrelanguagelearning.com/Wednesday. And I've got something that's really helpful to you that you can use, especially as an example, to make your curriculum a lot sharper, especially if you would like to just look at something to get an idea of what it looks like to have can-do statements be infused into lessons, into the whole unit building experience, everything. Check out the free curriculum. It's unit-based if you're using units, because there's lots of different ways you can do curriculum, right? But if you're unit-based, this might help you. It's from South Carolina. I'm shouting it from the rooftops. I'm really proud of this project, and it's free for all educators to use. K through 12, all languages. Go to lalibrelanguagelearning.com/SC, and you will get a full outline provided to you by the state of South Carolina. It was a Department of Education project that I was a part of, along with 80 other really talented teachers. I worked on French 1, and we helped to create a proficiency-centered, unit-based curriculum, and can-do statements were the absolute heart and soul of everything that we did, including the lesson samples, as well as the IPAs and the guiding everything really for all of the units. So you'll find in there a nice laid out, easy to follow skeleton for you if you're looking for something to help you with your curriculum for that. And last but not least, I'm so excited about this because it's still going on for a few more hours. I'm in EST, so we got 8 more hours if you're a night owl, but we have 8 more hours of this sale. Have you heard about this? So on TPT surprised us all with this really cool spring sale. And if you go there if you're a Teachers Pay Teachers user, you can go to TPT and use the code 4U21. Resources are 20% off for myself and all your other favorite creators. Go on and stock up on all your spring favorites because it's going to end at midnight tonight. So you make sure that you're getting what's in your cart. Clear it all out now while you got that discount. Also, if you love what you saw here today and you know that curriculum is something that you're going to be working on in the summer, my curriculum workshop in honor of this special sale using the same code 4U21, you can get that curriculum workshop on sale for 25% off, and it will walk you through a full lesson on can-do statements and how to use everything about them, including performance indicators, to make your curriculum special sauce amazing, but in 4 hours or less. And I give you a full 90-minute masterclass where I walk you through, like start to finish, exactly how you can make a detailed skeletal outline of a curriculum, level 1, just as an example. But we talk about everything from decolonizing your curriculum to crafting a unit with performance indicators and then using can-do statements to create your lesson plans. It gives you everything that you need to know so that you don't have to work on your curriculum alone. And it's normally a full price product, but you can get it for 25% off until tonight. So definitely check that out. I'm going to put the link in the comments below if you are into it. Ingrid, oh my gosh. Go to bed. It's 10 o'clock. Go to bed. I'm so glad that you were here, but thank you so much for joining me, especially in your late hours. Merci bien pour me joindre. Merci bien. And the last thing that I want to share with you is something that I'm really, really, really excited about. But if you are into self-care planners, I have something really, really cool for you. I am doing physical planners that are shipped right to your door, and you can get free shipping on these planners until this evening. If you're on my newsletter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So make sure you go and check that email to see what it is. And you can also see the post on Instagram to see what it is. But it's a thing of beauty. It really is a thing of beauty. So let me show you what the absolute favorites have been from the TPT sale so that you can go check them out yourself. If you're a Spanish teacher, this is where it's been at. This has been flying off the shelves today. This is a Spanish virtual field trip for Puerto Rico, and it's an absolute teacher favorite right now. It is flying off my shelves like crazy. And I'm so excited to share this with you because this is a really great way that you can work on those can-do statements for intercultural communication. What your students are doing in this resource is they're using Google Earth and all of these different videos, over 30 links and YouTube videos in order to explore La Isla de Puerto Rico and what they can do there. And then at the end, they're demonstrating to you that intercultural communication that they can, in a survival context, actually navigate all of these resources by making a budget for 3 different groups: a small budget, a large budget, and then a super large budget with their friends. So they're using a lot of different skills here, and 98% of all these resources are in Spanish. So you're really going to see some awesome intercultural content here. And for my French teachers, this is new. This is the same idea, but just in French. And we're going to Belgique to go explore everything they have to offer here. I mean, come on, who's already ready to travel for this? It's the exact same concept, but this one is in French. And we are going to Belgium to learn all about modern culture in Belgium. I'm really excited about this because even though Belgium is a place that is full of historical beauty and stories, modern culture is alive and thriving there. They are a huge piece of what's going on in Europe right now. And they don't often get talked about in that cultural melting pot, I guess you could say. But I found while I was researching for this product, all of these amazing links that your students can really get a feel for how modern youth culture in Belgium, especially, is dealing with COVID. There's a lot of things going on right now in Belgium related to COVID that your students would love to explore and talk about. So they can really work on their whole, oh, and there's of course, le mural de Stromé, like who's gonna miss that? So make sure that you check these out if you are looking for ways for your students to be more interculturally competent and use those can-do statements. Let me know how everything is going for you in your classroom. I am so glad that you could join me for this class here today. And I'm just so excited that we could hang out together for more chats about curriculum. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to check on the comments real here and see what we got for what everybody's doing for their can-do statements. Oh, Anna's going to add to her exit tickets for self-assessment and see what you need to reinforce. Beautiful. Ingrid, I'm going to post them at the beginning of the classroom, do the can-do statement for the day and the week. I find that that's the easiest way to start, really, because that's what I started doing is I thought, okay, like ACTFL's got this tool, can-do statements. Somebody told me I'm supposed to use them. So I guess I'm just going to throw them up on the board and see what happens. And what started to happen was that kids started to read them and ask themselves at the end of the day if they could actually do the task. So I thought, dang, kids are doing it better than I am. I better step up my game. And it did. It worked really well. So that is the best way to start. When I was starting my proficiency journey, that's where I started too, and posting it at the end of the week as I used to do. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I always need a refresher on things that I should be doing in class. That's always a thing. Karima says using can-do statements as lesson learning targets and create assessment rubrics. Yes, that's a really good one. Oh, thanks, Ingrid, giving me some love. That's so kind. Oh, merci bien à vous. I am so glad that all of you are here. Thank you again for being here for this class. And again, another reminder, I'm going to put all of these links in the comments below. You can join me every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Make sure that you get in on that sale that's happening today on TPT and everywhere in my store. All of my products are on sale, including the curriculum workshop. You'll see all those links below. But until next week, have an amazing, amazing can-do kind of week. And you're doing amazing things in your classroom right now. I am so proud of the way that you are still keeping on and keeping on. So thanks for being here. And you're just awesome. I just can't stop saying how awesome you are. But bye, y'all. Have a great week. Enjoy your spring break if you're on spring break. And I'll see you next week at 3.